Continuing coverage of Ball State softball here on Ball State All Access. Joel Godet and the 10th head coach in the history of the Ball State softball program, Lacy Wood, joins us. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Before we dive into what it's like for you to be here, I want to see if you can recall a date in particular. February 25th, 2005.
Oh, geez. Okay.
I just wanted to know, before we dive into Ball State stuff, if you wanted to apologize to the Ball State fan base.
I unfortunately cannot remember that.
2 doubles and a run and a 5-0 Louisville victory over the Ball State Cardinals. It's the only time you played Ball State in your career.
Oh, wow. That's impressive. Yeah, no, unfortunately, that was too early in the season for me to remember it at that point. But junior year, I guess, yeah.
What's it like for you to be back home? That game happened because these are two schools that are not far apart. You were an All-American catcher at Louisville. You're from Kentucky. To be back in this area now means what to you?
Everything. You know, my family being from Kentucky and getting to play at Louisville was really special because I had family or friends in the stands all the time. And now, you know, it's just a short drive away for, 90% of my family. Being really familiar with the recruiting trail and the student athletes in this area, it's so exciting. And I'm going to be honest, driving into the state, I just felt a sense of comfort and ease. It was really exciting.
Was it one of those very cool moments for you when the job opens up and you think to yourself, it's a head coaching job at a school that's got a good tradition, that is 2 hours from home, like, I need this job?
It's definitely something that piqued my interest early on. And as the layers kind of came open and being able to meet everybody, that aha moment, like you talked about, just became a little bit more solidified just talking to everybody on campus. And each and every single person that I met here just solidified, yes, this is where I want to be.
What gave you that vibe?
I think early on it was, Karen Lee and Beth Getz. Just how they presented themselves, being able to interact with them, definitely started that process. But I will say the significant point for me was being able to talk to a couple of the players, and that to me just sealed the deal because they're fantastic. They're a great group of kids. I can't wait to get to interact with them and coach them.
First-time head coach for you now, too. Everything else aside, you've got to be excited about that part of it.
Oh yeah, there's a lot to it. There's a long list of to-dos right now, but I'm excited to chip away at it and get to work. Because at the end of the day, like as we're sitting on this field, once you step between the lines, it's all the same. So once we can get to that point, things will feel pretty normal.
What's it like being here, by the way? We probably should have started with that. Like, this is the first time you've been here. This is your field now. How's that feel?
It's actually the second time I've been here. So I worked for Louisville Slugger right out of college and came on a visit because I was a tech rep for Louisville Slugger.
Cool.
Came on a visit to show the product. So I was technically on this field, but it definitely looks a lot different than the last time I was here. But when I walk through the gates, it just feels like home. It's a great place to play a ball game, and it's exciting.
You came out of college and you did some coaching locally in Louisville. You were a volunteer at Louisville at one point, but obviously worked in the private sector a little bit as well. What about coaching and what about this profession kind of drew you back in and sucked you back into the sport that really has been your life up until that point?
Sure. I didn't want to be a coach right out of college. I was wanting to be a counselor, and that didn't pan out. And then I worked for Louisville Slugger, so I thought, being close to the game, being a part of it was going to be a good option for me. And I found myself being close to the game, but not close enough. And when I went and played overseas, I was planning on actually going back over to Italy, but a friend of mine offered me the head coaching job at a local high school, and I really reluctantly said yes. But I'm going to tell you, within the first 1 or 2 days of coaching those student athletes, I knew that this is where I wanted to be. And, once I was doing odd jobs just so I could coach in the afternoons. And finally, I just took the leap. I said, if this is something that I might be really passionate about, I need to go all in. And that was when I became the volunteer at Louisville. And the rest was history. I loved every minute of practice and planning and just the whole process.
What kind of odd jobs, by the way?
I worked at a running store.
Okay.
I was not a runner, but I worked at a running store, and I worked as an admissions counselor at a local university, and then I actually had the opportunity to work in the building at the local high school. I worked in like admissions and marketing and stuff like that.
The running store probably went, have you tried these cleats? They're very fast.
I am very good at fitting the girls with their cleats and their running shoes. So.
You also played professionally. You mentioned playing overseas, over 2 seas, a little bit in Italy and a little bit in Australia. What is that experience like, and how does that help you now as a coach to be able to impart knowledge gained at a professional softball level and living in different countries? And coaching is so much more than just sports. Like, you've got a different kind of worldly perspective because of that. How does all of that mold together into what you do out here?
Sure, I think it definitely allows you to think more holistically about the student athlete, and you're only able to play softball for an X number of years, and if you can extend that post-college, then take all of that opportunity. And being overseas adds a really different perspective, especially my time in Italy playing with Italians and trying to learn a different language and play the game at the same level. Just adds a very unique experience.
How was the food?
Fantastic. It was about 20 pounds worth of food on me. But yeah, a lot of pizza, a lot of pasta. But yeah.
You used the word holistically at the very beginning of that answer, and I found a blog post that you had written probably about 1.5 years ago, and you talked about very holistic things when it comes to coaching. So I was curious if you can dive a little bit into your coaching philosophy. And I mean, you talked about, at one point you guys sent out a survey to the players for them to feel comfortable giving you direct feedback, and you talked about journaling. So obviously there's stuff on the field, but there's stuff off the field that helps you on the field. Tell me how that all wraps together into what you want to do as a coach.
Sure, I think that builds that trust, that factor that you need to create with them. And when, I go back to that survey, and it automatically gets buy-in, and at the end of the day, when we were hearing what the players felt like they needed to be successful, and we could go back and put that into a practice plan, at the end of the day, they feel like they're being heard, and they're going to come out here and perform because they felt like they got what they needed. And it definitely, I kind of go back to the past 7 or 8 months that we've been living in, and things that we have learned as coaches that, we were kind of forced to learn that we would take into today, which is, communication with your players is now very different. Softball brings us together. But now that we don't have softball to connect with and foster those relationships physically, now how do we connect with them over a screen sometimes? So kind of diving in a little bit deeper, maybe it's about how's your family, how's classes, getting on a different level that sometimes we don't always get to when we're on the field.
On the field, the mantra here in Muncie the last couple of years has been do damage. What is the mantra of Lacy Wood when it comes to, you've coached pitching, you've coached offense, you've touched a little bit of everything, and I'll get into the how and why of that because I'm curious in a second, but just overarching philosophy, what does a Lacy Wood softball team look like?
Well, I think it's interesting that you say do damage because that was the Boston Red Sox mantra, and I got to watch that firsthand. So damage was done. But for us, I think it's grit, it's determination. I use the term when somebody comes out and watches our team play, my vision is that every single person on the field has got dirt on their uniform and they got a smile on their face. So they're going to love the game and they're going to work really hard at doing that. So that's really the overarching goal, and they're going to own this program just as much as I am.
You were a catcher when you were in college, and that's why I say you've coached a little bit of pitching, you've coached a little bit of hitting. From a catcher's perspective, you're able to see a lot of different things. Joe Girardi has talked in the past on the baseball side why so many catchers go on to be major league managers. It's because of the way they view the game. What about your playing experience has informed what you do managerially and coaching-wise and teaching, and how that, not to use the same word, but how that gives you a more holistic view of what you do out here?
Sure. I think it's tools that I learned that I didn't realize I learned while I was in the middle of it. I think it takes, separating yourself a little bit. But I think as a catcher, one of the biggest things I learned how to do was manage pitchers that are very different in terms of personality and things that they need. And that innately has become my coaching style, which is trying to find out what the individual athlete truly needs and really diving in a little bit deeper. So, I think that's a tool that I didn't realize I was gaining in college, but definitely one that I put to use every day.
What's next for you? Because you've been here for all of like 72 hours. So how do you get this thing going?
Get on the field and get to practice. So, it's exciting. There's some processes that we have to go through with the situation that we're dealing with the pandemic. But it seems like there's some light at the end of the tunnel. So, next for me is getting through all of those steps, getting our players prepared to get out here on the field and do what, we all came here to do.